together in ZBrush last night. It's nothing major. It's this little kind of money-like guy. So something that you would maybe have some painted on details for the face. So this first approach we're going to do is having them on as separate elements that float on top of the face. The second approach tomorrow, we'll just do it with the actual the body texture itself. This approach gives us a little bit more flexibility in terms of adding a little bit of drag and overlap in through the mouth and eyes. So it could be a little bit of a better option, which is why I'm doing it first. All right, so let me just add in just a very default material. So let's see here, Lambert or Fong. And I'll just add in the basic body color that's there. So let's see, file texture. Now, again, I just UV mapped it in ZBrush, so it's not the best, maybe UV maps. There we go. And then for the eyes, I've got a couple things in Photoshop. I just haven't saved them out yet, so I'll just do that very quickly now. So say open as, open. Let's see, M drive, anime textures, character. Now I painted the pupils onto the actual texture. If I were to do this for myself, I might have those as separate elements as well. That way I could move them around and similar to, let's see, do I have this guy on here? I rigged kind of something a long time ago. I've kind of moved on from him though, but let's see. It's for it was for the dynamic exercises that typically are done in the summer. Let's see here. I know I have it somewhere, but you know what? I think I even in 2015 I wasn't using it. So never mind, I'll find it and I'll show you guys. For this one I used geometry to give it that 2D look, which gives us even more flexibility doing it that way. But again, I'll have to find it. It looks pretty good though, for the time it was done in. All right, so I've got this file. Where are my layers? Here they are down here, I guess. There they are. So I've got a couple different eye shapes. And I've got a couple different mouth shapes that I'm going to use to animate between, essentially. So I just have to save them off. And I'm going to save them off sequentially. That way I can load them in as an animated sequence and then drive them with some controllers or attributes, which is up to you. This is the same process, though. So File, Save Scene As. So I just have to figure out what's 1, 2, and 3. So closed mouth will be mouth 1. So let's see here. So mouth dot 1. So again, sequentially. So I have to include the dot. So PNG. I don't think I really need padding though, so I'll just do it that way. Source images, and let me just copy that. So save. Okay, mouth 2. So save scene as, PNG. Let me get rid of that just so I don't get a .png. And then mouth 3. Now it's a PNG. It should respect the transparencies automatically, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Okay, and then what we have here is mouth 3. And I'll just choose a couple of the eyes, just because it's taking a little bit long to go through. It's the end of the day. All right, so 1, 2, and 3. So that'll just come in as an animated texture. And then we can set the keyframes based off our slider positions. And that'll do the eyes maybe all the way from Y to a blink, essentially. So we've got this one. So this will be I1. So export. I wonder if I do this, if it'll allow me to name. No. No, it doesn't. So don't do that. So file, export as. Actually, don't use the export functionality because it's much slower. So let me just do that. So save scene as PNG. So we got I1. I2. I think I forgot the eyelashes on I1, but that's okay. I did it right before class today, so I was a bit rushed. So I.2. I did. I forgot. That's okay. We don't have to use it. I3. I could just add them now, I guess. I.3. And then I.4. And then a PNG. With eyes, I like doing asymmetrical blinks and asymmetrical movements. It looks better than twinned. That's why I'm only have one side, because I can set it up once and then mirror that over for the other, and then I can offset them. So it gives me a little bit more flexibility. And in a perfect world, I would even have separate maybe things for the eyebrows from the eyes, so you can have brow expressions separate from the eyes. But you know, for the interstitial, you could probably just do the entire face and just do a couple different faces. So you don't need to have maybe this much flexibility. Now with this one, as I mentioned, I'm missing my 3 eyelids. Do I have my pen? I do. So I'm just going to very quickly paint them. Let's see. Unfortunately, this is the older Photoshop, so I can't. It's a different brush. Now, is that going to work? Let's see here. I think that'll work. All right, so let me just say that again. So save scene as. And again, this was number 1. So I1. I'll just replace it. All right, so I'm going to minimize this now. And I'm going to bring in my eye. So I'm going to grab a polyplane. There we are. Rotate it up. I'm going to keep it flat. I'm going to keep my polyplane flat. So 90 degrees. Cool. And I just have to decide if I'm going to move it over. Probably not just yet. So let me bring in my animated textures on this. So I'm going to go into my material. Because I didn't make a cut map, I am going to just use, and I don't have an alpha for it, I'm just going to use a Lambert for now. That way we don't get any reflection in the transparent bits. So let me see here. Color. Now if I connect it this way, does it automatically set up the transparency? I think it does. We'll find out. I can't remember with the PNG. It's been a while. So I1, grab that, open. There we go. And what I'm going to do is load this in as a animated sequence. So use image sequence right here. So that allows me to go through. Oh, that looks good. Oh, that looks awesome. That looks way better than I thought. Great. Good stuff. Okay. So that does that, which looks great. Okay, and then I'm going to do the mouth. I'm going to grab the mouth as well. So let me just duplicate this plane, and I'm just going to shift it down a little bit. And I'm just going to apply a new texture to it. So let's see here, assign new material. And again, I just want to go with the Lambert. So let me just type in Lambert. There it is. And just grab my PNG. And this is the mouth. So there we are. Cool. And again, use animate sequence. And this will let me go through just the 3 stages of the smile, essentially, right? And which also looks okay. You know, you could have more. If you're an animator, you could really go to town with the number of keys you do and whatnot. And you could just animate the entire texture if you wanted to. The problem, though, with using the ZBrush for the UVs is that I'm just worried about distortion on the face. If you want to actually paint right on this in Photoshop and animate frame by frame, you want that to be relatively distorted, not distorted at all. So you'd probably want to do more of a almost like a planar projection for that area to a certain degree. But anyhow, this is a little bit better because this gives us the ability to move things around the face when it gets animating. So I'm going to start by just throwing, I have a couple options. I have to decide, am I going to move this around the face? Like I said, if he's going to move really fast, do I want to have a little bit of drag and stuff on these? I might. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a lattice. So create lattice, which is under deform. So deform, lattice, there we are. And I'll give that lattice a few divisions. So we don't need these guys, probably just these 2. And that's probably all I really need. Now, I want to be able to move this within the lattice. So the problem with the lattice, though, is that right now it's right to the edge of my image, which means if I move this, if I move my lattice, for example, and decide to move the plane around within it, it's going to pop out of that lattice, right? So it's going to just pop out of that. So I don't really want that to happen. So I get a better result. What I'm going to do is just go to the lattice base, and I'm going to scale this up a little bit, just so that shrinks down the object within it. And then whatever that distance is around it, I can move this around within that image, no problem, without it popping out. All right, so that's pretty good. I'll scale this up a little bit and position it to where that eye needs to be. And then I'm going to wrap it around the head slightly because this is a curved surface. I can just go into the lattice, set it to turn local off so it deforms nicely. And I'm just going to take this and then wrap it around the object, just so it fits to the surface of that. That way, from almost every angle, it's going to look okay. Unless, for whatever reason, you do this, then obviously you would have to maybe rethink things a bit. But typically, for most angles, you would never notice that. And I could probably get even closer to the surface even, so it's even better. So let's see, how far, I think I want these a little bit further apart though. And also I just want to be careful with the lattice position, because don't forget, once that's there, I can now move that around within that, right? And that's going to stick to the surface, or basically stick within the lattice. So whatever that lattice is, I can move that around within there. So I have some flexibility. So it's going to look like, it's going to be dragging over the surface nicely once I get that going. I'm going to do the same thing for the mouth, because I might want to get that smile really big, so I might want to be able to scale that up, so I can have some animation just by scaling the texture as well. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'll create a lattice for that. So can I just hit the G key? Yep. And then let me just turn that off. Go a little bit more with this one, just because it's going to be over a bigger space. And turn off local. And I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to take that lattice base and scale it up a bit. And I'm going to take the lattice shape and I'm going to move it in where I want this to be. Cool. So now it's going to adhere to that surface. Now, if I were to go into like more of a bigger smile, like this, I might want to take that image and scale it up so it gets bigger. So I just want to make sure that that lattice is actually wrapped around the surface a little bit better. So I'll take these edges and bring those in as well. There we go. Almost there. Almost there. So just take these top ones and move them out just a bit. Cool. So that way I can move that within the lattice somewhat. And then everything will transition. So I can maybe animate that around through that. And again, it's going to adhere to the surface within whatever kind of scale of the lattice. All right. I think these eyes could be just maybe a bit bigger though. I'm going to scale that up just a bit. There we go. Okay, so I've got my texture there. Maybe this could be just a little bit bigger as well. That looks a little bit better. So let me just move that out. All right. Now we just have to set up the control for them. So now we just have to set up our control for them. So I'm going to create a slider. I could either do one of two things, create a custom attribute, or maybe I'll just do this. How much time do we have? Okay, I'll do this. So I'm going to create a circle. I'm going to duplicate it so I can create a square. All right, so we got a circle and we've got a square. If I can, there we go. And let me just stretch this out a little bit. So we'll go, how many images do we have for the eye? 4, I think. So let's go 4 units. So 1, 2, 3, let's go one more so it can stay inside. So 1, 2, 3, 4, all right. And if I want to be fancy, maybe I could just double that up just a bit. All right. Let's parent all this stuff together. So first thing, I'm just going to combine these curves into one shape object. So to do that, I'm going to go Show Shapes, grab this shape node, grab the other transformation node, and type in parent minus R minus S. Oh, before I do, just make sure you freeze trans. I'll do that again. So shape node and transformation node, parent minus R minus S. So basically, we've got just one. If I were to look at the objects, so just one object. Oh, I grabbed the wrong things. Stupid me. Let me undo that. I'll do it again. So show shapes. Make sure I'm grabbing the right things this time. So this guy and that guy. There we go. Get rid of that. So basically, it's one object now, even though it's multiple curves. And I want to lock this down with inside it. So first thing I'm going to do is just rotate this 90 degrees so it's facing up. I'm going to parent that to this guy. Just a regular parent. Whoops. Just a regular parent. There we go. I should probably label as I go, but I'm not going to. And then what I'm going to do is freeze trans. So freeze trans, everything's zeroed out. And which one did I parent to which? Oh, there we go. So I can move that. So next thing I want to do is just take this guy, shift it over a bit. I can scale it down just a little bit. So I've got this controller that still goes up and down within that. Let me zero it out. So I'm just going to set some limits on this, just so that it can only go up and down, and only from only over 4 units. So And I should probably change that so this is maybe the top and it goes down for the blink. So this would be 0, and then, or 1 maybe, and then move it down from there. So let's see here. So I'm going to have to go into these guys. Just shift that down. There we go. So that's the top of my object. So limits. I'm just going to turn on some limit information here for y, which is up and down. So 0 is the maximum for the height, I guess. And then -4 would be the minimum. So basically, you can only go between 0 and, so only 4 units, basically, right? All right, so we got our custom little controller that's going to cause the blink to happen. We can also use a similar thing for the smile. So this one, maybe we'll just go, instead of 0 to -4, 0 to -3. Just because there's 3 shapes. All right. And then that means I might want to bring this bottom up just a bit. There we go. Cool. All right, so I'm not going to have the other side or the other eye until I get this working first. I'm going to save it off and just re-import it, or I can just duplicate special perhaps and scale it over to the negative. So there's a couple options to get that other side working. But let's connect it. So we've got this texture on here, this animated texture. But we want that. We want to be able to, but we want to control it. So right now this is being controlled through a script that ties the value of the image number to the frame numbers. All we need to do is break that and then connect it to our controller. Although I'm feeling like maybe we could just script it and connect it directly to the translation value. But you know what? Let's just do just a simple set-driven key. So I'm going to break this image number. So break, delete expression. Delete expression. So there's still a sequence there. So if I go to frame number 2, it's going to go to the next image. Number 3 is still going to go to that image. Number 4 will go to the blink. And basically, I just want to drive these 4 values with this slider, essentially. So I'm going to go into what's called the set-driven key, which is kind of like an expression, way of writing expressions without having to do any math or knowing any. It's a kind of a coding-free way of coding, essentially, or scripting. So it's great for artists, which is why they brought it in way back when. And I'm going to load the driver. The driver is basically the control object. And then I'm going to load the driven. Now, the driven is the image number. So where is that image number? Where is that image number located? And to be honest, I'm wondering if we could just do a direct connection. I wonder if we could just do I haven't actually tried this, a direct connection, but we would have to change this from going from 0 to -4. Anyhow, I don't want to confuse things, but that's something I might want to play around with a little bit. I do need to go into that node though. So how do I get to it? I'm going to have to go into the hypershade. I'm going to have to load that shader. Here's the texture. So I have to select the node. It's a good idea to label these things, or in this case, the file. And I'm going to load that here. And we should, under here, have frame extension. Now, I'm wondering if that's what we want. And maybe it is. Maybe it is. So let's just try it out. So I'm going to key the first frame, grab my frame extension, and then key that. All right, let's see what happens. I'm going to go to my last frame, go to my last number. Let's see, does this change if I change this? Because if it does, then it is the right thing. It does? Okay, cool. And then I'll key that. And let's see, does it work now? There we go, it works. Cool. And I'll just do, since that's so fast, I'll just do the same thing for the mouth. And then maybe we could have a little custom slider to control its position within the lattice, like a little look control, basically. That'll allow us to slide that around. So I can grab that. So translate Y again. And then, again, we just have to do the same thing. So I have to grab the texture, load that in. So basically what I'm doing is I'm highlighting the attribute that does the controlling, and then I'm also highlighting the attribute that gets controlled, essentially. And then once you've done that, you're going to make a key for it. So I'm keying the default pose first. And then we just go to the extremes, moving the controller first, and then the controlled object second. So this goes to 3. Or not. Oh, it's not working right now because I didn't break the expression yet. So can I break it through here? I'll just break it through the texture node. So let's see. So again, delete expression. And then I just have to do this again. So let me go back to frame 1. So key that. Go back down to the last frame. And then key this. So that's 3. Key that. All right. Does it work? No. I did something wrong. So what did I do wrong? Let's see. So I got that selected. Oh, maybe that wasn't actually controlling it. Well, let's figure it out. So I got that. Got this guy selected. And again, I'm going to key the first frame. Break the key, break connections. I'll key the first frame. And then I'm going to go to the last frame. Key it. And does it work? There we go. Awesome. So what I want to do now then is I want to grab my left eye control, the lattice group, its plane, and I'm just going to group those things together. Call it left eye. And I'm just going to duplicate special so I can have 2 eyes then. This should work. Otherwise, you could export it as a file and re-import it, just that section. So edit, duplicate special, option box. So copy, duplicate input graphs, and apply. Whoa, I've got 20 copies. He's going to have 20 eyes all over his head, maybe. That's a lot. So let's make sure that 0, 1. Cool. So now I've got this other group here. So I got this other lattice. So I'm just going to group that lattice to itself, just the lattice itself, not the lattice base. Scale it over. We're seeing the negative side of that texture, so I'm just going to want to invert that. So mesh display reverse. Cool. And then we should have 2 controllers now. So that's this guy. There we are. Cool. That looks awesome. But what's even cooler, though, is that I can then offset these, right? So these can then be, or they're not offsettable. Stupid thing. I don't want that. Here, let me redo that. What went wrong? All right, let me get rid of that. I'm going to try this again, but with a slightly different approach. First thing, though, let me just group that lattice to itself. So I can, okay, there we go. So edit, duplicate, special. Why are you not working? So let's just try input connections. And let's see if this one works. Well, this one will definitely not work either. All right, no worries. No worries, we can get it working. I'm just going to export it. So export selection. Left eye as a Maya file. Or, you know, you could always set it up twice, but that doesn't make any sense. So export. And then I'm just going to import it again. So import. There it is. All right, so now I've got two of them. So I should just be able to mirror that over. Do the same thing, so reverse the normals. So mesh display reverse. Move the controllers apart. So I got one. Oh, good, there we go. And I've got two. Now, why is this one? Oh, yeah. So one last thing I want to do maybe on these controllers, once I zero them, is just lock and hide everything other than the translate Y value. So I just want to lock and hide everything that's not translate Y. So lock and hide selected. So basically, you're only going to key, oh, wait. You're only going to key the, there we go. The translate Y value, and it'll prevent you from moving things away. And then also what we could do is this: we could select these shapes, the shape nodes of the top of the group for the controllers, and just lock them down so that they're non-selectable. So if I go under Object Display, Drawing Overrides, I can just turn on. Well, actually, I could just do this, maybe. Just template them. And I could just do that for both. And I could have probably done this once right in the beginning, maybe. And that would have been faster before I duplicated them all off. But that's okay. So I'm just templating. What templating does is it just prevents you from moving them or selecting them. You can still select them in the outliner. But that way, when I do rectangle selects, it's only going to select the actual controller. All right, that's awesome. That looks great. And then when you're binding things, just remember this. When you're going to bind this to the head, you're only binding the lattices. You're not binding the geometry. So not the lattice groups, just the lattice, just the actual lattice itself. Otherwise, you'll get double transformations, and these things will rip off that. So that works pretty good. And then you can just key it. So why don't we do that very quickly? So I'm going to key that. So key that. And then just key a little bit of a blink, maybe. And then I can offset it, which is even awesomer. That's not a word, but I'm going to TM that. So let's see, where's my dope sheet? I'll just grab a new one. So Windows, Animation Editors, dope sheet. Whoops. Yeah, then I can just go in and offset that. So don't forget to label things as you do this, which I didn't do. So now we can have slightly asymmetrical blink. That looks great. Cool. That looks awesome. And then when our character is moving around, what we could do is we could set up a little controller that sits in front of the face. I'll just do this really quick. I should have probably just done it once for the one side and then duplicated all of that over. So create. NURBS. Circle. Now, one thing you have to do, though, which we discovered just recently, is that there's this option here under Preferences, which I should just mention very quickly. Under Animation, where is it? Not Display, Settings Animation. Just make sure that under the Evaluation, it's set to Dependency Graph, which is the older, like 2 versions ago, way of doing things. As a default, it's set to parallel, and I don't know what Autodesk is doing. I think they think this is faster because it uses more cores, but the problem is that it prevents you from keying anything that's connected through expressions, like set-driven key. It'll look like it's working until you start keying it, and it just breaks. But as soon as you switch back over to DG, it just works again. So you might just want to set it to DG right away if you're going to do any kind of animating textures or set-driven key or blend shapes or anything like that. All right, so what I was going to do is this. So I'm going to take this guy, 90 degrees, maybe just throw it into a group So a group. And you know what? Don't forget to label everything. I'm going to center the pivot on that. So modify, center pivot. And I'm just going to take this and shift it over so it's in front of the lattice here. Something like that. Cool. And then I'm just going to make my connection. So we could do a couple things to connect the two. First thing I want to do is just make sure I'm getting rid of my freezing trans, getting rid of my translate Z and any rotations in scale. I don't need that. Break connections. Sorry, lock and hide selected. I could probably set some limits up on that as well. So go into my limit information, and I'll just keep it very one-to-one basically. So limit information, translate, just one-to-one. Basically that just prevents me from going beyond one-to-one. And then if this was zeroed out, which it's not at the moment, and unfortunately I forgot to freeze trans on that before moving it, so I can't, it's too late to do it now. So what I'm going to have to do is set driven key again, which is good. I'll just go through it one more time. It's very fast. And then I'll just re-import it one more time. And then I can move these around. And unfortunately, mirroring it, though, will, it'll be mirrored action. I wouldn't be able to move them together. That's okay. Maybe it'll work. So again, set driven key. So edit, set driven key. Oh, it's open already. So this is going to be my driver. This is going to be my driven. So X is left and right. So that's going to be the same on this guy, left and right. I think. Is it? We'll say yes, that is. Okay, so that's good. So I'm going to key that. Key the default always. Go to my maximum. Grab this guy, go to its maximum, which will be right near the edge there. Key that. Go to my minimum. Do the same thing. So grab this guy, move it over right to where the edge might be. There we go. Key that. And then I'll do the same thing for my high and low points. So just make sure you zero everything before doing any other if you're going to, because the cool thing with set driven key, it blends everything together. So I'm going to go to my high point. Whoops. Key the default first though, so that's translate Y. So key that. And then I'm going to raise this up. And then I'm going to raise this up right near the edge there. Key that. And then I'm going to grab my controller, go down to the minimum, and lower this down until I get right near the edge, which is around there, I guess, and key that. Right, cool. So now I've got this controller that will also move my eye around within the surface of that. So, you know what, if I was smart, I could have maybe created an attribute on this and then had the blink right on the attribute, so you wouldn't have to go between two different controllers maybe. But that's where some forethought might have come into play. So now I can have it blinking. Whoops, this guy is blinking. And then also have that move around within that space. So you can have a little bit of drag over these things. So you get googly eyes and things happening like that, which is pretty awesome. And then I'll just put this guy under the same left eye group. Whoops, wrong one. Delete this guy. And then re-export that. So file, export selection. And then re-import it. I'm going to turn use namespaces off. There we go. With this string, change name. All right. And let me do this. So left eye. All right. So then what I can do is just mirror this over. So we've got, I wish I changed the name first, but that's okay. So -1. Reverse that. Reverse that. So mesh display. Cool. And then just shift over one of the two, which is, I guess, this guy. There we are. So now we got this working. We also have this guy. So we got 2 of these now. So I've got, whoops. Oh, that doesn't work. Let's see. There we go. Unfortunately, it's mirrored because we cheated a little bit. The only way to really fix that is to, well, we could do this. I could go, actually, it's really easy to fix. I could just go into the dope sheet, switch it over to my graph editor. There we are. So set-driven keys will show up in your graph editor. Here they are here. All I need to do is just flop the values just to reverse these. So, for example, this is -1 and -0.1. And this is this value. So I'll change this value first because it's harder to remember. So I'll select that. I'm going to flip this. And then this one is going to become -0.1. There we go. And then I'll just do the other side. Was it 0.1 or 0.1? I think it was 0.1, right? 0.1. There we go. No, maybe, now I forget. Let me undo. What is that? 0.1. All right, I was right. Why does it look so different? I don't know. Oh, I think it's just because the scale is changing. So this one's going to be -0.1. And then I just have to do the same thing over here. So we've got this guy, so that's 2 something, and this guy is 2.7. All right. -2.7. Whoa, that's completely not right. Is it? I'll just lower it down. There we go. Close enough. It was positive. So now, just the high and lows. We just have to reverse those, and I guess I must have not quite done them right. Anyhow, it might be easier just to rekey that, perhaps. Yeah, let me just do that. Stupid set-driven key. All right. That's what happens when you try to get stuff for free. Sometimes you have to rework a few things. So that's just the high and low point. So I'm just going to rekey that. So that's let me break the connections on that. Break connections, which I'm staring right at. Yeah, right there. So key. Do this again. And then go to the minimum. Just remember, you're always moving the controller first, and then the controlled object second. So keep it within the lattice, otherwise, it falls out of the lattice. And then key. All right, so now this should work. There we go. So that moves around within that. Zero that up. Awesome. So what do we got here? So we got that blinking. Are we going to do some asymmetrical blinking? So if I were to bind that, I'm not going to put a skeleton in it just at the moment. What I'll do though is I'll just parent these lattices into the head. These would actually get bound into your lattice. I feel like I missed something. I did. I missed this guy. So let me just grab this. Into the body. So all that's going to stick and move with that. So if this was bound, all of that would move. So if I were to set a keyframe on this, so if I were to make him move really fast from one direction to the other, what I can then do is I could add in a little bit of drag. Now, let me just zero this out for a second. Now whoops, and of course I didn't freeze. Make sure you're always freezing trans before you start rigging. These guys could also get parented into whatever rig you have controlling the head. So there's a head control, the groups that these guys are under. So these guys are both in groups. Those will get parented to that. So it'll move with the body as well. All right, so let me just go back in. So then I can add in a little bit of drag. So I can key these here, and then I could maybe just drag these a little bit over this way, and then maybe overshoot it a little bit so they go a little bit past here. And then maybe as he's going so fast, we could have a little bit of a squint on there. And then maybe I want to move the blink a little bit further. So or not, but let's see, maybe the blink can be moved a little bit further. Let's see here. So this is the blink here. So just move it up. Maybe offset it a little bit. Cool. Although I don't know why there's that last keyframe there. What's going on with that? I'll just delete it. And then, maybe I could have a little bit of mouth animation as well. So, and then we could create a little bit of a control for the mouth if we wanted to. So let me just grab that mouth control. Whatever. So we could, and then we could, scale that up or move that around within the lattice as well. As long as it stays within the lattice confines, then you don't have to worry about it falling apart. That works really well. The animation is not that good, but the controls are working pretty good. Nice. All right. That was a little bit longer than I thought, but let me stop it there.